The morning sun cast a golden glow over the sprawling estate where Sarah Chen was about to marry the love of her life. She stood before the ornate mirror in the bridal suite, her reflection showing a picture of pure elegance. The ivory silk dress hugged her petite frame perfectly, its intricate lace details catching the light as she moved. Her long black hair was styled in an elaborate updo, adorned with tiny pearls that matched her grandmother's antique necklace. "You look absolutely stunning," whispered her maid of honor, Jessica, as she adjusted the delicate veil. "Michael is going to lose his mind when he sees you." Sarah smiled, though her eyes held a distant look that Jessica couldn't quite place. Most brides were nervous, but there was something different about Sarah's composure. She seemed almost too calm, too collected for someone about to walk down the aisle in front of 300 guests. "Are you okay? You seem a million miles away," Jessica asked, concern creeping into her voice. "Just thinking about how much my life is about to change," Sarah replied softly, touching the small silver pendant hidden beneath her dress. It was the only piece of her past she allowed herself to keep visible, a reminder of who she used to be before she became Sarah Chen, loving daughter and devoted fiancée. The estate belonged to Michael's family, the prestigious Hartwell lineage that had built their fortune in shipping and real estate over generations. The ceremony was set to take place in their private gardens, where hundreds of white roses and baby's breath created an almost fairy tale atmosphere. Crystal chandeliers hung from temporary structures, and a string quartet played softly as guests began to arrive. Michael Hartwell stood at the altar, adjusting his silver cufflinks nervously. At 32, he was everything any woman could want: handsome, successful, kind, and completely devoted to Sarah. He had proposed 6 months ago during a romantic dinner in Paris, and, since then, he had been planning what he called the wedding of the century. His family had spared no expense, flying in flowers from Ecuador, hiring a world-renowned chef, and ensuring every detail was perfect. "Nervous?" asked his best man, David, straightening Michael's tie. "Terrified," Michael admitted with a grin. "But, in the best possible way. I still can't believe she said yes. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve her." David chuckled. "You're perfect for each other. I've never seen you happier than you've been these past 2 years." Michael nodded, thinking about how Sarah had literally bumped into him at a coffee shop near his office. She had been carrying a stack of books from the local university where she worked as a linguistics professor, and, when they collided, papers and books went everywhere. He had helped her gather everything up, and, when their eyes met, he knew his life had changed forever. What he didn't know was that the collision hadn't been accidental. Sarah had been watching him for weeks, studying his routines, learning everything about his family and their business connections. But, somewhere in those first few conversations over coffee, her carefully planned assignment had become something real, something that terrified her more than any mission she had ever undertaken. In the bridal suite, Sarah's phone buzzed quietly. A single text message appeared on the screen: "Package delivered. Perimeter secure. Proceed as planned." Ghost. She deleted the message immediately and slipped the phone back into her small beaded purse. Jessica was busy helping the other bridesmaids with their bouquets and hadn't noticed the brief interruption. "Ladies, it's time," announced the wedding coordinator, a perfectly polished woman named Margaret who had orchestrated weddings for celebrities and royalty. "The ceremony begins in 15 minutes. Sarah's heart began to beat faster, but not from wedding nerves. She had been trained to control her physiological responses, to remain calm under pressure that would break most people. But today was different. Today, she was about to marry a man she had genuinely fallen in love with, while knowing that everything was about to fall apart. The guests had assembled in the garden, an impressive collection of business leaders, politicians, and society figures. Michael's father, Richard Hartwell, sat in the front row next to his wife, Eleanor. They had initially been skeptical of Sarah, this mysterious woman with no family present and a vague background story about being an orphan who had worked her way through graduate school. But her intelligence, grace, and obvious devotion to their son had won them over. "She's perfect for Michael," Eleanor had told her friends. "She grounds him, makes him think beyond just business and social obligations." What the Hartwells didn't know was that their guest list included several individuals who weren't there to celebrate. Among the waitstaff, the photographers, and even some of the invited guests, operatives had positioned themselves strategically throughout the estate. They had been planning this for months, using the wedding as the perfect cover for their real objective. The string quartet transitioned into Pachelbel's canon in D, signaling the beginning of the processional. Jessica and the other bridesmaids began their walk down the rose-petal-strewn aisle, their powder blue dresses flowing gracefully as they moved. The guests rose to their feet, anticipating the bride's entrance. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped out of the bridal suite. She had no father to walk her down the aisle. That part of her cover story was actually true, so she would make the journey alone. As she appeared at the back of the garden, a collective intake of breath could be heard from the assembled guests. Michael's face lit up with pure joy as he saw her. Even David, who had known Michael since childhood, had never seen his friend look so completely happy. Sarah moved gracefully down the aisle, her trained awareness cataloging every face, every possible exit route, every potential threat, even as she smiled and nodded to the guests. Halfway down the aisle, she made eye contact with Michael, and, for a moment, everything else faded away. The mission, the deception, the danger that was approaching, none of it mattered. In that instant, she was simply a woman walking toward the man she loved, hoping against hope that somehow everything could work out. The ceremony began beautifully. Father O'Malley, the family priest who had baptized Michael and officiated his parents' wedding, spoke about love, commitment, and the sacred bond of marriage. The words resonated more deeply than Sarah had expected, and she found herself fighting back genuine tears. Marriage is not just the joining of two hearts, Father O'Malley said, his voice carrying across the garden, but the creation of something entirely new. It requires trust, honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. Trust and honesty. The words hit Sarah like physical blows, reminding her of the elaborate web of lies that had brought her to this moment. Michael was looking at her with such complete love and trust that she almost broke character entirely. She wanted to tell him everything, to warn him about what was coming, but she knew that would only make things worse. The vows they had written themselves were heartfelt and personal. Michael spoke about how Sarah had changed his perspective on everything, how she had shown him that there was more to life than business success and family expectations. He promised to love her, protect her, and support her dreams, no matter what the future brought. When it was Sarah's turn, she struggled to find her voice. Every word felt like a betrayal, even though her feelings were genuine. "Michael, you showed me what it means to be truly known and accepted by another person," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You gave me a home when I thought I would always be wandering. I promise to love you with everything I have, for as long as I'm able." The careful phrasing wasn't lost on her, for as long as I'm able rather than forever. It was a small attempt at honesty in a sea of deception. As Father O'Malley prepared to pronounce them husband and wife, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the garden. A man in a dark suit was speaking quietly into a small microphone, and she recognized the stance, the alertness that marked him as security personnel. But he wasn't part of the Hartwell family's security team. The ring exchange proceeded smoothly, though Sarah's hands trembled slightly as Michael slipped the platinum band onto her finger. The weight of it felt enormous, like a chain binding her to a life she could never really have. "You may now kiss the bride," Father O'Malley announced with a warm smile. Michael's kiss was tender and full of promise, and the guests erupted in applause and cheers. For just a moment, Sarah allowed herself to believe that this could be real, that they could walk back down the aisle as husband and wife and live happily ever after. But, as they turned to face their guests, she saw more subtle signs of the approaching storm. A waiter positioned too close to the exit. A photographer whose camera was pointed in the wrong direction. A guest checking his watch with obvious anxiety. The recessional music began, and Sarah and Michael started their walk back down the aisle as husband and wife. The guests threw rice and flower petals, laughing and calling out congratulations. Eleanor Hartwell was crying happy tears, and even Richard looked more emotional than usual. As they reached the back of the garden, Michael pulled Sarah aside for a private moment before the reception began. "We did it," he said, spinning her around in a circle. "Mrs. Hartwell, I love the sound of that." Sarah's heart broke a little more at his joy. "I love you so much," she whispered, and meant every word. The photographer wants to get some pictures before the light changes, Michael said, checking his watch. Then, we can enjoy our reception. Dancing, cake, champagne, the works. Michael, Sarah said suddenly, gripping his hand tightly. No matter what happens, I want you to know that meeting you, falling in love with you, that was never part of the plan. That was real. He looked at her with concern. What do you mean? Sarah, you're scaring me a little. Before she could respond, Margaret, the wedding coordinator, appeared with her clipboard and professional smile. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell, we need to begin the photo session immediately to catch the golden hour light. As they moved toward the designated photo area, Sarah's trained senses picked up the increasing tension among the hidden operatives. Whatever was about to happen, it was imminent. She had perhaps minutes before her two worlds collided in the most devastating way possible. The photographer, a tall man with kind eyes and an easy smile, directed them through various poses. Beautiful, he kept saying. Absolutely beautiful. The love between you is so obvious. If only he knew, Sarah thought, how complicated love could be when duty and desire pulled in opposite directions. As the photo session continued, Sarah noticed that some of the guests were being quietly directed away from certain areas of the garden. The security team, both legitimate and otherwise, was clearly preparing for something significant. Michael remained oblivious, focused entirely on his new bride and their celebration. One more shot by the rose arbor, the photographer suggested, leading them toward a secluded area of the garden. As they walked, Sarah's phone vibrated once in her purse. A single buzz that meant only one thing: the operation was about to begin. She had trained for this moment, prepared for the possibility that her cover would eventually be blown, but she had never imagined it would happen on what should have been the happiest day of her life. The late afternoon sun was beginning to cast longer shadows across the garden as the wedding photographer captured what would be the last moments of innocence before everything changed forever. The first sign of trouble came during the cocktail hour. Sarah and Michael were mingling with guests on the estate's grand terrace when she noticed a man in an expensive suit speaking too intently into his phone near the fountain. His posture was wrong for a wedding guest, too alert, too focused on something beyond the celebration. When their eyes met briefly across the crowd, she saw the recognition flash in his face before he quickly looked away. "Excuse me for just a moment," Sarah murmured to Michael, who was deep in conversation with his college roommate about their upcoming honeymoon to Tuscany. She made her way toward the ladies' room, but instead ducked into a service hallway she had memorized during the planning process. Old habits died hard, and, despite her attempts to leave her former life behind, she had unconsciously mapped every entrance, exit, and hiding spot on the estate. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message: compromised. They know. Extraction in 20 minutes. Garden maze, north exit. Sarah's blood ran cold. They had found her, just as she had always known they eventually would. For 2 years, she had lived as Sarah Chen, linguistics professor and devoted girlfriend. But, before that, she had been Agent Phoenix, one of the most effective operatives in a shadowy government division that officially didn't exist. She had been recruited at 19, fresh out of college with degrees in linguistics and international relations. Her gift for languages, combined with her small stature and ability to blend into any environment, had made her perfect for deep cover operations. For 8 years, she had lived multiple lives, gathering intelligence, eliminating threats, and disappearing without a trace when missions were complete. The Hartwell assignment had been different from the beginning. Intelligence suggested that Michael's father, Richard, was unknowingly laundering money for a dangerous international syndicate through his shipping business. Sarah's job had been to get close to the family, gather evidence, and identify the key players. It was supposed to take 6 months. But she had fallen in love with Michael within weeks of meeting him, and everything had become complicated. She had tried to complete the mission quickly and cleanly, but the deeper she dug, the more she realized that Richard was innocent. The laundering was happening without his knowledge, orchestrated by someone else in the company. Someone who had now apparently discovered her true identity. Sarah returned to the reception, forcing herself to smile and chat with guests while her mind raced through possibilities. She needed to get Michael away from the estate before the situation escalated, but she also needed to identify who had blown her cover and why they were moving against her now, on her wedding day. "There you are," Michael said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "I was starting to worry you'd gotten cold feet and run off." His joke hit closer to home than he could possibly know. "Never," she said, kissing his cheek. "I was just touching up my makeup." "Well, you look perfect as always. Come on, my aunt wants to meet you, and then we can start the dinner service." As they moved through the crowd, Sarah's trained awareness catalogued the subtle changes happening around them. Several guests had quietly departed, claiming sudden illnesses or family emergencies. The catering staff seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact and clustering together in small groups. Most concerning of all, she noticed new faces among the servers, people who definitely hadn't been there during the ceremony. The dinner service began with Richard Hartwell offering a toast to the happy couple. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of business success. His words were warm and genuine, speaking about how Sarah had brought joy and stability to Michael's life. "To Sarah," he concluded, raising his champagne glass, "who has shown us that the best things in life come when you least expect them." The irony of his words wasn't lost on Sarah as she smiled and raised her own glass. She had indeed come when the Hartwells least expected, but not for the reasons they believed. As the dinner continued, Sarah excused herself again, this time genuinely needing to use the restroom. In the hallway, she was intercepted by a woman she didn't recognize, tall, blonde, wearing a server's uniform but with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Agent Phoenix," the woman said quietly. "We need to talk." Sarah's body went into automatic defensive mode, her muscles tensing despite her calm exterior. "I think you have me confused with someone else." "Cut the act. I'm Agent Silver from Internal Affairs. We have a problem, and you're in serious danger." Sarah glanced around to ensure they weren't being observed. "What kind of problem?" "Viktor Kozlov. Remember him?" The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Viktor Kozlov had been her final mission before she disappeared into civilian life. A Russian arms dealer who had been using diplomatic immunity to move weapons to terrorist organizations. Sarah had infiltrated his inner circle and gathered enough evidence to shut down his entire operation. He had been arrested, but during transport to a secure facility, he had escaped. Intelligence had suggested he had died during the escape attempt, but his body was never recovered. "He's alive," Agent Silver continued, seeing the recognition in Sarah's eyes. "And he's here. Tonight. He's been tracking you for months, waiting for the perfect moment to get his revenge." "How many men does he have?" 12 that we've identified. They've been infiltrating the estate all week, caterers, florists, musicians. They're professionals, and they're armed." Sarah's mind raced through tactical assessments. 12 armed men against approximately 300 civilians, including the man she loved and his family. The odds were impossible, especially since she had no weapons and was wearing a wedding dress. "What about backup?" 20 minutes out, minimum. Kozlov timed this perfectly. He knows how long it takes for support to reach this location. "Does he know about Michael? About my feelings?" Agent Silver's expression was grim. "He knows everything. This isn't just about killing you, Phoenix. He wants to destroy everything you care about. He's going to make you watch." Sarah felt a cold fury building inside her, the same emotion that had made her so effective as an operative. She had tried to leave that world behind, to become someone normal and peaceful. But if Viktor wanted to threaten the man she loved, he was about to remember why Agent Phoenix had been one of the division's most feared operatives. "I need weapons. There's a cache hidden in the estate's wine cellar. Emergency protocols from when we first started monitoring the family." "But, Sarah." Agent Silver grabbed her arm as she turned to go. "You can't do this alone. Wait for backup. In 20 minutes, everyone I care about could be dead. I'm not waiting." Sarah returned to the reception, her demeanor unchanged but her awareness heightened to combat levels. She moved through the crowd, identifying threats and potential weapons. A butter knife from the dinner table. A heavy crystal vase from the gift display. The fire poker from the library fireplace. She found Michael at their sweetheart table, looking handsome and relaxed as he chatted with David about their college football days. The sight of him, so trusting and unaware of the danger surrounding them, strengthened her resolve. "Dance with me," she said, taking his hand. "Of course, Mrs. Hartwell," he replied with a grin that made her heart ache. As they moved to the dance floor, the band played at last, the song they had chosen for their first dance as husband and wife. Sarah pulled Michael close, memorizing the feeling of being in his arms, the scent of his cologne, the sound of his heartbeat. "I love you," she whispered against his ear. "I love you too. This has been the perfect day. Michael, I need you to listen to me very carefully, and I need you to trust me completely." Something in her tone made him pull back to look at her face. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "In a few minutes, some very dangerous men are going to try to hurt us. When I tell you to run, you take your parents and David and you get as far away from here as possible. Don't look back, don't try to help me, just run." "What are you talking about? Who would want to hurt us?" Before she could answer, the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the reception area. Guests began murmuring in confusion and concern, but their voices were quickly drowned out by the sound of men shouting in Russian. 12 figures in black tactical gear stormed into the reception area, automatic weapons raised. Their faces were covered, but Sarah recognized the leader's stance and movement patterns immediately. Viktor Kozlov had indeed survived, and he had come for his revenge. "Ladies and gentlemen," Viktor announced in accented English, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly silent crowd. "Please remain calm, and no one will be harmed. We are here for one person only." Michael instinctively moved to shield Sarah, but she gently pushed him behind her. Her wedding dress might make her look fragile and helpless, but underneath the silk and lace was someone who had been trained to kill with her bare hands. "Sarah Chen," Victor continued, scanning the crowd. "Or should I say, Agent Phoenix? Please step forward, and we can end this quickly." Sarah felt Michael's confusion and fear radiating behind her. She could hear Eleanor Hartwell crying softly and Richard demanding to know what was happening. All around them, their friends and family were terrified, not understanding why their celebration had turned into a nightmare. "Sarah," Michael whispered urgently, "who is Agent Phoenix? What is he talking about?" The moment she had dreaded for 2 years had finally arrived. She turned to look at Michael, seeing the dawning realization in his eyes as pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Michael. Everything I told you about my past was a lie. But my love for you, that was real. That was the only real thing." Before Michael could respond, Victor's patience ran out. "Since you seem reluctant to cooperate," he called out, "perhaps we need some motivation." One of his men grabbed Eleanor Hartwell, pressing the barrel of his gun against her temple. The elderly woman whimpered in fear, reaching out desperately toward her husband. "You have 10 seconds to show yourself, Phoenix, or I start killing the people you care about." Sarah stepped forward, her hands raised in apparent surrender. "I'm here, Victor. Let the others go. Your fight is with me." "Ah, there she is," Victor said with satisfaction. "The ghost who destroyed my life. Do you know what I've been through because of you? What you cost me? You were selling weapons to terrorists. You got what you deserved." "What I deserved?" Victor's voice rose with fury. "I lost everything. My organization, my money, my reputation. I spent 2 years in hiding, planning this moment. And now, Agent Phoenix, you're going to lose everything too." As Victor spoke, Sarah was calculating distances, angles, and possibilities. The wine cellar was 50 feet away through the kitchen. The emergency cache would include weapons and communication equipment. But getting there meant leaving Michael and the others exposed. "The man you just married," Victor continued with cruel pleasure, "does he know who you really are? Does he know about the people you've killed? The lives you've destroyed? Michael's face had gone pale with shock and confusion. Sarah, please tell me this isn't true. Tell me this is some kind of mistake. Sarah's heart shattered at the pain in his voice, but she couldn't take her eyes off Victor's men. They were positioned strategically around the room, covering all exits. Professional formations, military precision. These weren't thugs, they were trained soldiers. I'm sorry, Michael, she said without turning around. I wanted to tell you everything, but I couldn't. The life I had before you, it wasn't who I wanted to be anymore. How touching, Victor sneered. A love story built on lies. But, don't worry, Phoenix. Your beloved husband won't have to live with the disappointment for long. Victor raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Michael. That's when Sarah Chen disappeared entirely, and Agent Phoenix took control. The transformation was instantaneous and complete. Her posture changed, her expression hardened, and her eyes became cold and calculating. The helpless bride vanished, replaced by a weapon in human form that had been forged in the crucible of covert operations. Big mistake, Victor, she said, her voice now carrying an edge that made several of his men shift nervously. You just threatened the wrong person. And, with those words, Sarah unleashed 8 years of training and a lifetime of suppressed fury on the men who had dared to turn her wedding day into a battlefield. The first kill happened so quickly that most witnesses would later swear they had imagined it. Sarah's left hand found the butter knife she had noted during dinner while her right hand grabbed the heavy crystal vase from the gift table beside her. In one fluid motion, she hurled the vase at the nearest gunman while diving behind the sweetheart table, pulling Michael down with her. The crystal struck the operative in the face with a sickening crack, and he staggered backward, his weapon discharging harmlessly into the ceiling. Sarah was already moving, using the table as a springboard to launch herself at the stunned man. The butter knife, properly wielded, could be as deadly as any blade, and she drove it into the exact spot on his neck that would drop him instantly. Take cover, she screamed to the guests as Victor's men opened fire. The reception area erupted into chaos. Guests scattered in all directions, overturning tables and chairs as they desperately sought shelter. The string quartet abandoned their instruments and fled toward the kitchen. Wedding flowers and champagne glasses shattered under the barrage of gunfire. Sarah rolled behind the bar, Michael crawling frantically beside her. Stay down, she commanded, her voice now carrying absolute authority. No matter what happens, stay behind this bar until I come back for you. Sarah, I don't understand what's happening, Michael gasped, his face white with shock. Who are you? I'm someone who's going to keep you alive, she replied grimly, checking the area behind the bar for anything useful. A corkscrew, several heavy bottles, and a small paring knife from the garnish station. Not much, but she had worked with less. The woman I married, the woman I fell in love with, was any of that real? Sarah's heart clenched at the pain in his voice, but she couldn't afford to be distracted now. Every moment I spent loving you was real. Everything else. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look into her eyes. I'll explain everything later, I promise. But, right now, I need you to trust me one more time. Before Michael could respond, 2 of Victor's men rounded the bar, weapons raised. Sarah was ready for them. She came up from her crouch like a spring releasing, the corkscrew in her left hand finding the first man's wrist while her right elbow struck his throat. As his gun clattered to the floor, she pivoted and drove the paring knife into the second operative's thigh, dropping him to his knees. A quick strike to his temple with a champagne bottle finished him. 10 left, she muttered, retrieving one of their automatic weapons and checking the ammunition. Michael stared at her in absolute shock. The graceful, gentle woman he had married had just efficiently neutralized 2 armed men in a matter of seconds. Oh my God, Sarah. What have you done? What I was trained to do, she replied, scanning the reception area for her next move. Michael, I need you to get to your parents. They're hiding behind the head table. When I start moving, you run to them and get everyone out through the kitchen. There's a service road behind the estate that leads to the main highway. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Because if you stay here, you'll get yourself killed and probably me too. She grabbed him by the shoulders, her grip firm but gentle. I love you too much to let that happen. Across the room, Victor was barking orders in Russian to his remaining men. Sarah's linguistic training allowed her to understand every word. They were regrouping, preparing to surround the bar and finish her off. But they had made the mistake of underestimating their target. Phoenix. Victor called out. You cannot hide forever. Surrender now, and I will make their deaths quick. Counteroffer, Sarah shouted back, checking the weapon's safety. You and your men leave now, and I'll let some of you live. Victor's laughter echoed through the damaged reception area. You are surrounded and outnumbered. What can one woman do against my soldiers? Sarah smiled grimly. Let me show you. She sprinted from behind the bar, keeping low and using the overturned tables as cover. Her wedding dress, for all its elegance, was proving to be a liability. The silk caught on debris, and the long train threatened to trip her with every step. Without hesitation, she grabbed a shard of broken glass and sliced through the fabric, cutting the dress off at knee length and shredding the constraining bodice to allow for better movement. Victor's men opened fire, bullets splintering wood and shattering glass around her as she moved. But Sarah knew how to read a shooter's intentions, how to predict where bullets would go based on stance and breathing patterns. She had been dodging gunfire before most of these men had learned to shave. She reached the kitchen door just as two operatives moved to intercept her. The first one made the mistake of getting too close. Sarah grabbed his weapon hand and used his momentum to send him crashing into the industrial stove. The second man had better positioning, but Sarah was already moving, using a rolling cart as a battering ram to knock him off balance before finishing him with a precise strike to the solar plexus. 8 left, she breathed, making her way through the kitchen toward the wine cellar. Behind her, she could hear Victor screaming in frustration and rage. His carefully planned revenge was falling apart, and his supposedly helpless target was systematically eliminating his team. The other guests were escaping through various exits, but she could still hear Michael's voice calling her name from somewhere in the chaos. The wine cellar was hidden behind a false wall in the estate's basement. Sarah found the concealed switch and slipped inside just as footsteps thundered down the stairs behind her. The emergency cache was exactly where Agent Silver had said it would be, a metal case hidden behind a rack of vintage bottles. Inside, she found everything she needed: a tactical knife, 2 handguns with extra magazines, a small explosive device, and a secure communication unit. She stripped off what remained of her wedding jewelry and grabbed a tactical vest from the case. It was too large for her frame, but it would have to do. Phoenix, we know you're down there, Victor's voice echoed down the stairwell. My men have surrounded the building. There is nowhere left to run. Sarah activated the communication unit. Control, this is Phoenix. I have a code red situation at the Hartwell estate. 12 hostiles, armed and dangerous. Civilian casualties possible. Phoenix? The voice on the other end sounded shocked. You're supposed to be dead. Your handler reported you as a casualty 3 years ago. Well, I got better. I need immediate backup at my location. And send medical teams, there are going to be wounded. Backup is already en route. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Sarah checked her weapons and prepared to move. Victor's men would be cautious about coming down into the cellar. The narrow stairs created a fatal funnel that favored the defender. But they would eventually work up the courage to rush her position, and when they did, she needed to be somewhere else. She found the service tunnel that connected the wine cellar to the estate's old servants' quarters. It was dusty and cramped, but it would allow her to get behind Victor's position. As she crawled through the tunnel, she could hear the muffled sounds of the continuing battle above. When she emerged near the library, she could see the tactical situation clearly. Victor had positioned his remaining men to cover all the exits, but they were focused outward, watching for her to try to escape. They weren't expecting her to come from behind. The first man never knew what hit him. Sarah emerged from the shadows like her namesake, the tactical knife finding its mark before he could even turn around. She relieved him of his weapon and ammunition, then melted back into the darkness. 7 left, she whispered into her comm unit. Phoenix, what's your status? Came the reply from control. Reducing the opposition. Any word on civilian casualties? Most of the guests have been evacuated safely. Your husband and his family are secure. My husband. The words hit her harder than she had expected. Just hours ago, Michael had been promising to love and protect her forever. Now he knew the truth about who she really was, and their marriage was probably over before it had truly begun. But that pain would have to wait. Right now, she had a job to finish. Sarah moved through the estate like a ghost, using every piece of training she had ever received. Room clearing techniques, silent movement, pressure point attacks, skills she had hoped never to use again but that now flowed back as naturally as breathing. The second operative went down in the library, taken out by a sleeper hold applied from behind a bookshelf. The third and fourth were eliminated in the main hallway, where Sarah used the mansion's architecture to her advantage, creating angles that allowed her to engage them one at a time rather than facing them together. For left, she reported to control, checking her ammunition. She was running low, and Victor's remaining men would be getting desperate. Desperate men made mistakes, but they were also more dangerous and unpredictable. Victor's voice echoed through the mansion's intercom system. Phoenix. You are destroying my men, but you cannot destroy what I know about you. Your precious husband will learn everything. Your real name, your kill count, the innocent people who died because of your missions. He will know exactly what kind of monster he married. Sarah felt a cold rage building inside her. Victor wasn't just trying to kill her, he was trying to destroy any possibility of happiness she might have with Michael. He wanted to poison their love with the truth about her past, to make sure that even if she survived, she would lose everything that mattered to her. You want to know something about monsters, Victor? She called back, her voice carrying clearly through the mansion. Monsters don't feel guilty about what they've done. I've carried the weight of every life I've taken, every family I've destroyed in the name of national security. But, you know what? I'm not feeling guilty about what I'm going to do to you. She found Victor and his 3 remaining men in the main foyer, positioned behind overturned furniture and marble statues. They had created a strong defensive position with good fields of fire, but they had made one crucial mistake: they had positioned themselves with their backs to the main staircase. Sarah made her way to the second floor, moving carefully to avoid creaking floorboards. From the balcony overlooking the foyer, she had a clear view of their positions. But taking them out from above would require perfect timing and accuracy. She activated the explosive device from the emergency cache, setting it for a 15-second delay, then hurled it down into the foyer. It landed behind Victor's position, near the base of the stairs. Grenade, one of his men shouted in Russian. As they scrambled to take cover, Sarah dropped down from the balcony, landing behind their disrupted formation. The explosion, when it came, was more flash and sound than destructive force, but it provided the distraction she needed. The knife took out the first man before the smoke cleared. The second operative turned toward her but caught a bullet center mass before he could bring his weapon to bear. The third man got off a burst of automatic fire, but Sarah was already moving, rolling behind a marble column as chips of stone exploded around her. That left only Victor. Sarah could hear him breathing heavily somewhere in the smoke and debris. She knew he was wounded, she had seen blood on his arm during the firefight, but a wounded enemy was often more dangerous than a healthy one. It ends here, Phoenix, Victor called out, his voice strained with pain and exhaustion. Even if you kill me, there will be others. You cannot hide from what you are forever. I'm not hiding anymore, Sarah replied, moving carefully through the settling dust and smoke. You made sure of that when you came after my family. Family? Victor laughed bitterly. You think that man will still love you after tonight? You think he can look at you the same way, knowing what you're capable of? You have destroyed your own happiness far more thoroughly than I ever could. His words hit their mark, raising doubts and fears that Sarah had been suppressing. But she pushed them aside. Whatever happened between her and Michael, whatever the cost of tonight's revelations, she would not let Victor win. She found him behind the reception desk, clutching his wounded arm and pointing a pistol in her general direction. His face was pale with blood loss, but his eyes still burned with hatred and the desire for revenge. "Drop the weapon, Victor," Sarah said, her own gun trained on his center mass. "It's over." "No," he replied with a weak smile. "It's just beginning. Do you think your government will let you disappear again? Do you think they'll allow someone with your skills to remain outside their control? You may kill me tonight, but you will never be free." In the distance, Sarah could hear the sound of helicopters approaching. Her backup was finally arriving, but it was too late to change the outcome of this confrontation. "Maybe not," she said quietly. "But at least the people I love will be safe." Victor's finger tightened on the trigger, but Agent Phoenix was faster. The gunshot echoed through the foyer with a terrible finality, and Viktor Kozlov's quest for revenge ended where it had begun, in violence and blood. As the smoke cleared and the sound of helicopters grew louder, Sarah stood alone among the debris of her wedding reception, still wearing the tattered remains of her ivory silk dress, knowing that the life she had tried to build with Michael was probably over, but knowing also that she had kept him alive. The tactical teams swept through the estate like a dark tide, their boots crunching over broken glass and scattered wedding decorations. Sarah stood in the center of the destroyed foyer, her hands raised as red laser dots danced across her torn wedding dress. She had dropped her weapon and activated the emergency beacon, but protocol demanded she be treated as a potential threat until her identity was confirmed. Agent Phoenix called out the team leader, a stern-faced woman in full tactical gear. "Commander Torres, FBI Counterterrorism. We're here to extract you." Sarah slowly lowered her hands. "The estate is secure. 12 hostiles eliminated. No civilian casualties, but we'll need medical teams for the wounded." "Understood. We have paramedics standing by." Torres gestured to her team, and they began spreading out to secure the scene. "Agent Silver briefed me on the situation." "Viktor Kozlov?" "Eliminated," Sarah replied simply, her voice flat with exhaustion. Torres nodded and spoke into her radio, coordinating the cleanup operation. Around them, forensics teams were already beginning to document the scene, taking photographs and collecting evidence. The elegant wedding venue had been transformed into a crime scene, every beautiful detail now evidence of the violence that had shattered Sarah's attempt at a normal life. "Where's my husband?" Sarah asked, the word feeling strange on her lips after everything that had happened. "Michael Hartwell and his family are safe. They're being debriefed at a secure location nearby. He's been asking for you." Sarah's heart clenched. "What has he been told?" "The basics. That you're a federal agent, that tonight was connected to a past operation, that you saved everyone's lives." Torres paused, studying Sarah's expression. "He's in shock, understandably. Learning that your new wife is a trained killer isn't something most people can process easily." "Can I see him?" "Soon. But first, we need to debrief you and get you medical attention. You're bleeding." Sarah looked down at herself, noticing for the first time the cuts on her arms from broken glass and the bruising on her ribs where a bullet had struck her improvised tactical vest. The adrenaline that had carried her through the fight was beginning to fade, leaving behind pain and an overwhelming sense of loss. An hour later, after medical treatment and a preliminary debriefing, Sarah was led to a secure conference room in a nearby federal building. Through the one-way glass, she could see Michael sitting at a metal table, his head in his hands. He had changed out of his wedding tuxedo into borrowed clothes, jeans and a simple sweater that made him look younger and more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "He's been asking to see you for the past hour," Torres said. "But, Sarah, you need to prepare yourself. This isn't going to be easy. Everything he believed about you, about your relationship, has been turned upside down." Sarah nodded, smoothing down what remained of her wedding dress. She had refused the offered change of clothes, needing to face this conversation as the bride Michael had married, not as Agent Phoenix. "Give us some privacy," she requested. Torres hesitated. We need to monitor the conversation for security reasons. Please. He's not a threat, and he deserves to hear the truth without an audience. After a moment, Torres nodded and gestured for her team to clear the observation room. 15 minutes. Then, we need to continue the debrief. Sarah took a deep breath and entered the conference room. Michael looked up when the door opened, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. He stood slowly, his movements uncertain, as if he wasn't sure who she was anymore. Sarah, he said quietly. Or is that even your real name? Sarah Chen is my real name now, she replied, staying near the door. It's the name I chose when I left my old life behind. The person you married, the woman who loves you, she's real, Michael. Everything else was just packaging. Michael stared at her for a long moment, taking in the torn dress, the bandages on her arms, the way she held herself with a new kind of awareness he had never noticed before. 12 men, he said finally. They told me you killed 12 armed men. Tonight. At our wedding. I did what I had to do to protect you and your family. But you could have done it all along. All this time, I thought I was protecting you, taking care of you. But you were never the one who needed protection, were you? Sarah felt tears threatening for the first time since the attack began. Michael, I fell in love with the way you wanted to take care of me. I fell in love with your gentleness, your kindness. For 2 years, you made me feel like I could be something other than a weapon. What were you before? Before you became Sarah Chen? Sarah closed her eyes, knowing that this moment would determine everything. My code name was Phoenix. I was a deep cover operative for a classified government program. I infiltrated criminal organizations, gathered intelligence, and, when necessary, I eliminated threats to national security. You were an assassin. The word hung between them like a blade. Sarah nodded slowly. Among other things, yes. Michael sank back into his chair, the weight of the revelation crushing down on him. How many people have you killed? Does it matter? Yes. It matters to me. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, I need to understand who you really are. Sarah walked slowly to the chair across from him and sat down, her movements careful and deliberate. Including tonight? 43 people. All of them bad people, Michael. Terrorists, arms dealers, human traffickers. People who would have killed thousands of innocents if they had been allowed to continue. Michael's face had gone pale. 43. I know how that sounds. I know what it makes me in your eyes. No, you don't know, Michael said, his voice stronger now. Because I don't know what it makes you. A hero? A monster? The woman I love? I'm trying to process this, Sarah, but it's like everything I thought I knew about reality has been turned upside down. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of 2 years of lies and 1 night of brutal truth settling between them. Why did you marry me? Michael asked finally. If you're this government agent with all these secrets, why did you choose me? I didn't choose you, Sarah said softly. Not at first. I was assigned to investigate your family's business connections. Someone was using your father's shipping company to launder money for international criminals. My job was to find out who. Michael's expression hardened. So it was all fake. Meeting me, falling in love, it was all part of your mission. No. Sarah reached across the table, but Michael pulled his hands away. Michael, the assignment brought me to you, but what happened between us was real. I was supposed to be in and out in 6 months, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't give you up. Did you find what you were looking for? Who was using my father's company? Sarah hesitated. Even now, she was bound by operational security protocols. I can't give you details, but yes. The threat was neutralized, and your father never knew he was being used. His company is clean. And Viktor Kozlov? The man who attacked our wedding? He was from a previous mission. I helped bring down his arms dealing network 3 years ago. He's been hunting me ever since. Michael stood and walked to the small window, looking out at the city lights. 3 years ago. That was before you met me. Yes. So everything that happened tonight, the danger to my family, to our guests, that was because of something you did before you even knew I existed. Sarah felt the guilt crushing down on her. Yes. Michael, I'm sorry. I tried to leave that world behind, but it followed you anyway. He turned back to face her. And now it will always follow you, won't it? There will always be someone like Victor, someone seeking revenge for the things Agent Phoenix did. I don't know, Sarah admitted. Maybe. Probably. And you would have married me without telling me any of this? You would have let me live in ignorance, never knowing what kind of danger I was in just by being with you? The accusation hit like a physical blow because it was absolutely true. Sarah had been willing to build their entire marriage on lies and omissions, justifying it as protection when it was really selfishness. You're right, she said quietly. I was being selfish. I wanted a normal life so badly that I was willing to risk your safety to have it. Michael returned to his chair, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. Tell me about tonight. When you fought those men. Was that the real you? When you were moving through the mansion, killing trained soldiers, was that Sarah Chan or Agent Phoenix? Sarah considered the question carefully. Both. Neither. I am both of those people, Michael. I can't separate them anymore. The training, the skills, the ability to do violence when necessary, that's part of who I am. But, so is the woman who loves you, who wanted nothing more than to make you happy. You saved my life tonight. My parents' lives. David's life. Probably dozens of other people. Yes. And you did it without hesitation, without fear. You became someone completely different from the woman I thought I married. Sarah nodded, knowing where this was leading. Michael was quiet for a long time, his hands clasped tightly together. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can do this, Sarah. I don't know if I can be married to someone who can kill 12 people and, then, sit here discussing it like we're talking about the weather. I know, Sarah replied, her heart breaking. I know it's too much to ask. It's not that I think you're evil, or that I don't understand why you did what you did. But, Sarah, I can't look at you right now without seeing, without remembering. Without remembering what I'm capable of. Yes. Tears were streaming down Michael's face now. God help me, yes. And, I hate myself for it, because you saved everyone I care about. You're a hero tonight. But, you're also someone who can kill with her bare hands, and, I don't know how to reconcile those two things. Commander Torres knocked on the door, indicating that their time was up. Sarah stood slowly, smoothing her tattered wedding dress one final time. What happens now? Michael asked. I don't know. The government will probably want to debrief me extensively. There will be investigations, paperwork, questions about why Victor was able to track me down. As for us. Sarah's voice broke slightly. I guess that's up to you. Michael stood as well, and, for a moment, they faced each other across the small table like strangers. I need time, Sarah. I need time to process all of this, to figure out if I can accept who you really are. I understand. Do you? Because the woman I married this morning was someone I thought I knew completely. But, standing here now, I realize I don't know you at all. I don't know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you might be capable of. And, that terrifies me. Sarah nodded, fighting back tears. I love you, Michael. That's the only thing I know for certain right now. Everything else is negotiable, but, that's not. I know, he replied softly. I love you too. That's what makes this so hard. Commander Torres entered the room, her expression sympathetic but professional. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to continue the debrief. Mr. Hartwell, you're free to go. We have agents who will escort you home. Michael looked at Sarah one last time. Will I see you again? If you want to, Sarah replied. When you're ready. He nodded and walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Sarah? For what it's worth, I'm glad you're exactly who you are. Because if you weren't, we would all be dead right now. After he left, Sarah sat alone in the conference room for several minutes, still wearing her destroyed wedding dress, trying to process the end of the life she had tried to build. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the ongoing investigation, agents coordinating, evidence being catalogued, reports being filed. Commander Torres returned with a cup of coffee and a clean set of clothes. How did it go? About as well as expected, Sarah replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. He needs time. Will he come around? Sarah shrugged, too emotionally drained to speculate. Would you? If you found out your spouse was someone completely different from who you thought they were? I don't know, Torres admitted. But I do know that love can survive almost anything if both people are willing to work at it. And if one person has 43 kills on their record? Torres was quiet for a moment. You saved a lot of lives tonight, Sarah. Including his. That has to count for something. Sarah changed out of her wedding dress and into the offered clothes, simple black pants and a gray sweater that felt strange after months of choosing outfits with Michael's preferences in mind. As she folded the ruined silk and lace, she wondered if this was the end of Sarah Chen entirely, if Agent Phoenix was all that remained. The debriefing continued for hours, covering every detail of the attack, every aspect of Victor's operation, every decision Sarah had made during the firefight. As dawn approached, she found herself answering questions about her relationship with Michael, about her emotional state, about her plans for the future. The program would like you to consider returning to active duty, Torres said as the session wound down. Your skills are rare, Sarah, and tonight proved that you haven't lost your edge. I'll need some time to think about it. Of course. But don't take too long. The world is becoming more dangerous, and we need people like you. People like you. Sarah wondered what that meant exactly. Killers? Heroes? People who could compartmentalize violence and go home to suburban dinner parties? People who could love someone completely while lying to them about everything that mattered? As she left the federal building that morning, Sarah realized she had no idea where to go. The estate would be a crime scene for days, possibly weeks. Her apartment with Michael would be awkward at best. Her old safe houses had been compromised when Victor found her. For the first time in 2 years, she had no home to return to. She walked through the city streets as the sun rose, still processing the events of the night. Her wedding day had begun with hope and joy and ended with violence and loss. She had saved the man she loved, but, in doing so, she might have lost him forever. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, package ready for pickup. New identity, clean background, fresh start available. Just say the word. Control. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. It would be so easy to disappear again, to become someone new and start over. But she had tried that once already, and it had only delayed the inevitable reckoning. She deleted the message without responding. Whatever happened next, she would face it as Sarah Chen, the woman who had fallen in love with Michael Hartwell and married him in a garden full of white roses. The woman who had killed 12 men to protect the people she cared about. The woman who was both a trained assassin and someone capable of deep, lasting love. She would not run again. Not from her past, not from her feelings, and not from the uncertain future that lay ahead. For better or worse, this was who she was. Now she had to learn how to live with it.